Hello YouTube, and welcome again to my channel. This time I thought I would talk a little bit about why it's so hard to wake up from the indoctrination of Jehovah's Witnesses. Now, most of us who are awake have at some point or another said, the organization is much different today than when I was a member. And this is both true and this is also not true. It's true in the sense that the organization is actually changing all the time. In fact, core beliefs change on a somewhat regular basis as new light is shed upon things within the realm of Jehovah's Witnesses. So in that pure sense, their beliefs are actually changing all the time. And circuit overseers, for example, will have different ideas that they'll want you to try and service. And something that was in vogue one time will not be in vogue the next. And some circuit overseers may stress things for the entire time they're serving a congregation, and then they're followed by someone else who stresses something exactly the opposite of what they stressed. But since these representatives are from the branch, they are to be treated as if they are speaking for the branch. So you typically try to follow their suggestions. Now, one thing that Jehovah's Witnesses don't realize is that to them, their organization actually is God. They treat the organization exactly the same as they would treat God. And that is in the sense that anything that the organization said is not to be questioned and is to be followed as if it were the Word of God. This is true even if what the organization is saying contradicts what's in the Bible. And since the organization changes so often, there's a constant state of flux. So in that sense of what the beliefs are, the organization is changing all the time. The one thing that remains the same is the authority structure. It's been cloaked in different appearances, if you will, but ultimately the authority structure has been, since the mid-1970s, has been the governing body. And really, before that, it was the organization, since the days of Rutherford. And in the days of Rutherford, Rutherford represented the organization. So ultimately, the authority structure has always been the same. And that has never changed, and their line has always been that you obey them as if they were speaking the Word of God, and to disagree with them is tantamount to disagreeing with the Word of God, or to tantamount to disagreeing with God Himself. So that aspect of the organization is indeed no different. But what happens is when you wake up to it, and you see how foolish the teachings are, and you suddenly realize that, I think you begin to view the organization in a different light. And suddenly it becomes a different organization to you. I think the reality, though, is that you just see what was always there, but you were not allowing yourself to see. At least that's my personal opinion. That doesn't make it right, and that doesn't make it wrong. We're all entitled to our opinions. So then why is it so hard to wake up? Well, being is that the organization literally sets itself in the place of God. They instill this incredible fear of even having any doubts about what they're teaching. So to them, even doubting what the organization says, whether it's in print, in their publications, or whether it comes from the stage at conventions, if you doubt what you're told, that's considered a sin. And of course, apostasy is considered the worst sin of all. So they implant this routine in your head when you're a believer, whereby when you see or hear any sort of information which could prove that what the organization is teaching is false, the first thing you do is you put it out of your head. The second thing you do is you ascribe evil intentions to whatever source was giving that. And the third thing you do is you do whatever you have to get that thought out, to keep that thought out of your head. It's kind of where the cognitive dissonance goes into overdrive. So sometimes that will involve attacking the source, the messenger, or what have you. It'll involve any number of things, perhaps almost being delusional at times. So that's what happens. So if a news program comes on where they present information that's not favorable to the organization, the witness mind immediately goes to shutting off their thinking ability, ignoring what they're being told, ascribing evil intent to the source, and doing whatever they have to put that news out of their head. So, for example, a story comes up on a Jehovah's Witness who's molested children. Well, right away, they stop their thinking, and they don't consider the evidence. They say this news story has to be motivated by apostates. There's no way this is possibly true because the news media is Satan's tool. But however, if that same channel then directly after that had a story about building kingdom halls and had a positive story, well then suddenly the media is Jehovah's tool. So that's kind of the way the Jehovah's Witness mind works. Anytime any negative information comes up in any way, shape, or form, their mind shuts off, thinking ability goes away, and evil intent is ascribed to whatever source the information comes from. So a way that I kind of have started thinking about that is kind of like a virus on a computer. And if we're watching this video, we all know how to use computers. We know what viruses do. So if you have a virus on your computer, that virus will take some functionality of that computer out of your hands, and it will do things that you don't want it to do. That could be any number of different things. And there are viruses that are more severe and viruses that are less severe. So to remove a virus from your computer, you either need a program that can do so, and depending on the virus, that could be different programs, or you need special skills. So there are easier viruses to remove and there are harder viruses to remove, and they require the commensurate amount of skill and or program to take care of them. Well, this is very much so the case with Jehovah's Witness indoctrination. So for those of us who are awake, there was something at some point along the way that caused us to start waking up. And perhaps things kept happening or something began to bother us. And what we did is we began to uninstall the virus from our own minds that caused us to shut off our minds when we saw things that demonstrated that Watchtower teachings were not true. And for some of us, this may have happened really fast. And for others, this may have taken a long, long time to get to the point where you're able to rationally consider the facts and make a decision. So we've done this, and now that we're able to process things in a rational manner and see them for what they are, we realize exactly how foolish the teachings are, which makes us think that the organization is much different than when we were part of it. And we also think, why can't other people see it? Because as humans, I believe that we have a predisposition to think that everybody thinks the way we do. And unfortunately, nothing could be further from the truth. Everybody thinks their own particular way, they process things their own particular way, and they've got to come to their own conclusions. So going back to the illustration of that computer virus, if you've got, we'll just say 2 individuals, both have viruses on their computer. They don't particularly realize it, but one of them stumbles across it and is able to remove the virus from their computer. And right away, they notice a performance enhancement in their computer. It's faster, it doesn't do some quirky thing they didn't like doing, and it works the way it's supposed to. So they notice this other individual has a virus on their computer as well. But that individual doesn't know they have a virus. In fact, they think they have the best working computer there is. And that computer is also their most prized possession. They use it for their most important things in life, and they're not going to let anybody touch that computer. So how do you go about uninstalling that virus on their computer? And moreover, you don't know if they had the same virus on their computer that you had on yours. Their virus might be a lot more severe than the virus was on your computer. So you would have to find a way to uninstall that virus when they weren't looking and when they were unaware. And that could be exceedingly tricky. It's kind of the same thing with waking people up. Depending upon the level of indoctrination, there's going to be different tactics that can be utilized to wake people up. And there are some people that may be resistant to pretty much all forms of waking up. And if you attempt to do so, you may do nothing but damage your relationship with that individual, which is a risk that you take. So for example, with a computer, if you started trying to uninstall the virus from this individual's computer when they weren't looking and they came back and found you, you can imagine they would be pretty mad at you, even if you were trying to do them, even though you are trying to do them a favor. So it's the same thing with waking people up. Despite the fact that you have their best interest at heart, they don't realize what their situation is. They believe that they have the best thing on planet Earth, and they're in a special group of people, so they get really hurt and really upset when you try to tell them the truth. So that's kind of what I was thinking, because a lot of us out there have family who are still indoctrinated, they're still asleep, and it's upsetting, it's hurtful. We know what the organization is doing to them, but they don't. They think that they're in a spiritual paradise. They think that they have the most loving brothers and sisters, and that they're loyal to Jehovah. But of course, we know that that loyalty is only so long as you are loyal to the organization. And we know that that love that they experience goes away really fast, and the only people that really get the most love are those who are doing the most organizational activities. So we see these things because our eyes are fully opened, but theirs aren't. So, is there a way that we can wake them up? Well, there is no one answer to that question. Anytime you attempt to wake an individual up, you are attempting something dangerous. Going back to that computer, if you don't know what virus you're working with and you attempt the wrong way to uninstall it, you could really ruin that computer. And unfortunately, that's kind of the situation with waking people up. You don't really have any way of knowing how deeply that indoctrination runs. And so any attempt on your part to begin to remove that indoctrination could have some seriously detrimental effects. So you have to be extremely cautious about how you try to approach it, if you try to approach it at all. By the same token, anything you do to get the word out about Jehovah's Witnesses en masse, you have to accept the fact that there is not necessarily any particular right way to do it, and that different ways might work for different people. So kind of you put the information out there in whatever way, shape, or form that you can do or deem appropriate, and it gets to the people, and they're going to respond to it however they particularly respond to it. And this actually makes me think, actually watching JW Fairy Tale's latest video made me think about this, but an individual reminded me, an individual who's long since woken up, but who I'm now in contact with again. That individual told me that one time, we're looking at almost 20 years ago now, probably maybe 15, 20 years ago, but they started to talk to me about something that was reasonable and sensible, and they were just having a sensible conversation about it with me. And my response to them was to stop talking about it and to never bring it up again. And so what happened with me back at that point is I was heavily indoctrinated. My JW instilled defenses came up, my thought process stopped. I assigned evil intent to the person who was delivering it to me, despite the fact they were very close to me, and I did whatever I had to put it out of my mind. I literally stopped thinking about it until they brought it back up to me just recently. So for 15 or 20 years, I hadn't even thought about that. But that's kind of the way that works. So that's why there really is no right way to try to wake people up. But anytime you try in any way, shape, or form, you run the risk of causing other issues. So the information that we put out there is useful because there are people who are starting to wake up that need to get this information. And there are also people that if they get the information, it'll eventually cause them to wake up. We don't know who's who. We are hoping to wake everybody up, so we need as many different ways of trying it as we possibly can. With different viruses, you need different programs. With different levels of indoctrination and different personalities, you need different approaches. So anyways, that's kind of my thought for the day. But that's just something I was thinking about. Why is it so hard to wake people up? And I guess I kind of should know because I was in for right around 3 decades myself, and it took quite a bit to wake me up. So that's my video for this time. Thanks for watching.